and welcome to Storytime with Chaplain Ward. You may ask why I'm doing this. I was an English Lit major, but long before I was ever an English Literature major, I loved storytelling. From the books that I read growing up and the poems that I was able to absorb, there's something about the power of story that conveys lessons that reach us in our heart in a way that nothing else can. And today I wanted to share a short story with you called The Countess and the Impossible. And this was written by Richard Thurman and was published in the Reader's Digest way back in June of 1958. It's an old one, but a good one. And I think that you will enjoy the lessons and the truths that are in this story. So just enjoy this with me, and I hope it blesses your day. No one in our Utah town knew where the Countess had come from. Her carefully precise English indicated that she was not a Native American. From the size of her house and staff, we knew she must be wealthy. But she never entertained, and she made it clear that when she was at home, she was completely inaccessible. Only when she stepped outdoors did she become at all a public figure, and then chiefly to the small fry of our town who lived in awe of her. The Countess always carried a cane, not only for support, but as a means of chastising any youngster she thought needed disciplining. And at one time or another, most of the kids in our neighborhood seemed to display that need. By running fast and staying alert, I managed to keep out of her reach. But one day, when I was about 13, as I was shortcutting through her hedge, she got close enough to rap my head with her stick. "Ouch!" I yelled, jumping a couple feet. "Young man, I want to talk to you," she said. I was expecting a lecture on the evils of trespassing, but she looked at me, half smiling, and she seemed to change her mind. "Don't you live in that green house with the willow trees in the next block?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. I've lost my gardener. Be at my house Thursday morning at 7, and don't tell me you have something else to do. I've seen you slouching around on Thursdays." When the Countess gave an order, it was carried out. I didn't dare not come on that next Thursday. I went over the whole lawn 3 times with the mower before she was satisfied, and then she had me down on all fours looking for weeds until my knees were as green as the grass. She finally called me up to the porch. "Well, young man, how much do you want for your day's work?" "I don't know, 50 cents maybe." "Is that what you figure you're worth?" "Yes'm, about that." "Very well. Here's the 50 cents you say you're worth. Here's the $1.50 more that I've earned for you by pushing you. Now I'm going to tell you something about how you and I are going to work together. There are many ways of mowing a lawn as there are people, and there may be worth anywhere from a penny to $5. Let's say that a $3 job would be just what you have done today, except you'd have to be something of a fool to spend that much time on a lawn. A $5 lawn is, well, it's impossible. So we'll forget about that. Now then, each week I'm going to pay you according to your own evaluation of your work." I left with my $2, richer than I remembered being in my whole life, and determined that I would get $4 out of her the next week. But I failed to reach even the $3 mark. My will began to falter the second time around her yard. $2 again, eh? That kind of job puts you right on the edge of being dismissed, young man." "Yes'm, I'll do better next week." And somehow I did. The next time around the lawn, I was exhausted, but I found I could spur myself on. In the exhilaration of that new feeling, I had no hesitation in asking the Countess for $3. Each Thursday for the next 4 or 5 weeks, I varied between a $3 and a $3.50 job. The more I became acquainted with her lawn, the places where the ground was a little high or a little low, places where it needed to be clipped short or left long on the edges to make a more satisfying curve along the edge of the garden, the more I became aware of just what a $5 lawn, or $4 lawn, would consist of. And each week I would resolve to do just that kind of job. But by the time I'd made my $3 or $3.50 mark, I was too tired to remember even having had the ambition to go beyond that. "You look like a good, consistent $3.50 man," she would say as she handed me the money. "I guess so," I would say, too happy at the sight of the money to remember that I had a shot for something higher. "Well, don't feel too bad," she would comfort me. "After all, there are only a handful of people in the world who could do a $4 job." And her words would comfort at first, but then, without my noticing what was happening, her comfort became an irritant that made me resolve to do that $4 job, even if it killed me. In the fever of my resolve, I could see myself expiring on her lawn, with the Countess leaning over me, handing me the $4 with a tear in her eye, and begging my forgiveness for having thought I couldn't do it. It was in the middle of such a fever, one Thursday night, when I was trying to forget the day's defeat and get some sleep, that the truth hit me so hard I sat upright, half choking on my excitement. It was the $5 job I had to do, not the $4 one. I had to do the job that no one could do because it was impossible. I was well acquainted with the difficulties ahead. I had the problem, for example, of doing something about the worm mounds on the lawn. The Countess might not even have noticed them yet, they were so small, but in my bare feet I knew about them. And I had to do something about them. And I could go on trimming the garden edges with shears, but I knew that a $5 lawn demanded that I line up each edge exactly with a yardstick and then trim them precisely with the edger. And there were other problems that only I and my bare feet knew about. Starting the next Thursday by ironing out the worm mounds with a heavy roller. After 2 hours of that, I was ready to give up for the day. 9 o'clock in the morning. My will was already gone. It was only by accident that I discovered how to regain it. Sitting under a walnut tree for a few minutes after finishing the rolling, I fell asleep. When I woke up, minutes later, the lawn looked so good and I felt so good under my feet, I was anxious to get on with the job. I followed the secret for the rest of the day, dozing for a few minutes every hour to regain my perspective and replenish my strength. Between naps, I mowed 4 times, 2 times lengthwise and 2 times across, until the lawn looked like a green velvet checkerboard. Then I dug around every tree, crumbling the big clods and smoothing the soil with my hands, then finished with the edger, meticulously lining up each stroke that the edge would be perfectly symmetrical. And I carefully trimmed the grass between the flagstones on the front walk. The shears wore my fingers raw, but the walk never looked better. Finally, about 8 o'clock that evening, it was all completed. I was so proud I didn't even feel tired when I went up to her door. "Well, what is it today?" she asked. $5, I said, trying for a little calm and sophistication. $5? You mean $4, don't you? I told you that a $5 lawn isn't possible. Yes, it is. I just did it. Well, young man, the first $5 lawn in history certainly deserves some looking around. We walked about that lawn together in the light of evening. Even I was quite overcome by the impossibility of what I had done. "Young man," she said, putting her hand on my shoulder, "what on earth made you do such a crazy, wonderful thing?" I don't know why, but even if I had, I could not have explained it in the excitement of hearing that I had done it. "I think I know," she continued, "how you felt when this idea first came to you of caring for a lawn that I told you was impossible. It made you very happy when it first came, and then a little frightened. Am I right?" She could see she was right by the startled look on my face. "I know how you felt, because the same thing happens to almost everyone. They feel the sudden burst in them of wanting to do some great thing, and they feel a wonderful happiness, but when it passes, it then passes because they have said, 'No, I can't do that. It's impossible.' Whenever something in you says it's impossible, remember to take a careful look. and see if it isn't really God asking you to grow an inch or a foot or a mile, that you may come to a fuller life. Since that time, some 25 years ago, when I have felt myself at an end with nothing before me, suddenly with the appearance of that word, impossible, I have experienced the unexpected lift, the leap inside, and known that the only way lay through the very middle of impossible. The end. Again, that was the short story, The Countess and the Impossible by Richard Thurman, Reader's Digest from June 1958. Now I know that we have way fancier lawn mowing equipment. And kids, some of you may think, 8 hours on a yard? That's going to be too much. I confess even the adults think that too. But the lesson of this story is that even when things seem impossible, maybe, as the story says, grow a little, be it an inch or a foot or maybe a mile. Because with that new growth, it's preparing you for the next big thing, the next big milestone, the next big challenge, the next big marker. So don't be afraid. Even during this time of difficulty, when you're at home thinking, oh, there's nothing to do, or I don't know if I can do this thing, or maybe put that extra amount of time into my schoolwork project, or learning how to cook, or tackle something else that may be big for you. Take the challenge that the Countess laid out. Try to do that $5 job, and you never know, you may hit the mark. Thanks for joining me for Storytime with Chaplain. We'll do this again soon. God bless. Have a good day.